So, folks, we've been talking today about what is a conservative, kind of like what is a woman. We have an entire generation where we've forgotten what it's like to be a conservative because we lack leadership. We have algorithmic prostitutes, we have social media, organic or unorganic clout farming. And meanwhile, the left continues to win on a lot of policies. We've gone backwards a generation in primaries, and then now we have this bizarre reactionary right that the more the right fails to put points on the board, the more discombobulated they get, the more they look towards foreign ideas, and the more they become unelectable and fail and rinse and repeat. And I think a lot of the problems reside in the fact that we're offering young voters a false dichotomy that conservatism somehow is the failed GOP of yesteryear, when in fact they were never conservative, and that was the problem. Or because it failed, therefore we have to dabble in all these new ideas, these reactionary weirdness. The Jews are bad, women are bad, pre-Enlightenment ideas, and we're just lacking a sense of leadership. And I was racking my brains for who is out there now continuing to hold the line that existed in politics before the latest fad, before the algorithms, before social media was a thing, when you actually had to drive towards an affirmative outcome. You had a certain destination you were trying to reach. And to me, I think really the most robust voice in this country that still has a platform, that had a platform predating this, is my good friend Dana Loesch. Obviously, you could find her anywhere, hundreds of stations, 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern. And the queen of conservative talk radio is with us today at the Blaze. I can't believe it's the first time, but Dana, a little bit of a role reversal here. Welcome to Sierra Podcast in the Blaze.
Thank you for having me, my friend. And I'm so glad that you're talking about this too, because it's so incredibly important. So this is, it is the issue, right?
It really is. I want to know if you agree with me or disagree, because I'm a little bit more pessimistic. My concern is my overall very thematic view of what's going on. I do feel the Democrats are going to flush out Republicans. This iteration is going to get flushed. And, in its wake, we're at a crossroads. We can build something affirmative that addresses the anti-white bias, that addresses the foreign influence, that addresses the unfairness of the economy, not created by the free market because we haven't had one this generation, but by venture socialism. In other words, things rooted in principle. Or we could dabble in European-style darkness that just is kind of like fascism, but it won't go anywhere and the left will keep winning. Do you have a little bit more of an optimistic view?
It's hard because I'm a cynic. I'm a natural cynic. I go through life expecting the worst so that when the worst happens, I'm adequately prepared. And when the best happens, it's a nice surprise. So, I just very stoic about that. But you bring up something very interesting in terms of who's going to flush whom out of this movement. And I go back to, your point, what you said, that Democrats are going to do it. The right Democrats are having their problem right now because they have essentially handed the keys of the direction of their party, every determining factor over to this rabble-rousing street team that they used in the late 90s and the early aughts to agitate voters and churn up momentum when the policies that they were proposing and their leadership wasn't inspiring people to go to the polls by themselves. So they needed to create all of this controversy to get people feeling like they were a part of resisting something, even though they couldn't define it and still can't. The right, we're sort of fighting over who to give those keys over, how we're going to do that, because I don't even like saying the phrase compassionate conservatism, that phrase that was coined during the Bush years, because let's be honest, it was just another form of big government. And there are a lot of people like myself, while I may vote Republican, I don't consider myself a Republican because they're too far left for me on so many different things. I mean, economically, with domestic policy, things of that nature. I was very against, some of the Bush approach. Long story short, conservatism, the way that you and I define it, has never, ever once been implemented. And all of
Yes.
these people out here that think that politics began that the day that they opened their X account 2 years ago have no idea about this. And you know
Yes.
what I'm talking about. I've challenged these people. Show me one piece of legislation. Show me a bill that made it out of committee that was legitimately conservative in principle, something that would have made the authors of the Federalist Papers proud, something that would our founders would have said, yes, this is the scope of America right here encompassed in this bill. They would never, there's nothing that's ever been proposed or passed that's like that. It has always been a hybrid of big government, soft Democrat, all under the veneer of GOP. So I always challenge people when they say, well, the conservatism failed. Conservatism was never given a chance because most people don't have the spine to do it. Most politicians, Daniel, don't have the spine to go out there and say, yeah, we need to privatize Social Security. Most of them don't have the spine to go out there and say, you know what, we need to completely overhaul education and have it to where, we have public schools that are not reliant upon tax dollars. They don't have the spine to go out there and talk about removing property taxes or even getting rid of the IRS. Or even now you see them cowering. They don't even want to talk about alliances and what that means for national security. So no, conservatism has not been never implemented, not even fully implemented. It's never been implemented. And it's been stopped by the same people who complain about it now, but have done nothing to advance the cause. So you're right on that. And I think those are the people that have not proven any political acuity, and they have no business in driving the car.
No, that's a good point. I mean, we were on our way. It wasn't perfect, but 2010 to 2014, we were building a movement. We were starting to get more aggressive in primaries. It was very hard, but we were knocking people off. We had a few good people here or there, but we were never incumbent. Then you have social media takes over. You have MAGA come in, and it's kind of a mixed bag. And I look back 10 years later, and a lot of the things you and I were fighting during the wake of the GFC, the Federal Reserve policies, the government takeover of housing, of healthcare, that has made life unaffordable for everyone, but almost destitute for a young generation that doesn't even remember that Obamacare is why healthcare is so messed up. So then you have all these young voices or new voices that have come in maybe the last 5 years or so, and they're like, you know what, conservatism's not working. And then they'll name drop Mike Pence, or I joke around Bob Michael, Bob Dole. Let's see how far we can go back to the 1970s.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because Bob Michael said this in the 80s, so therefore neo-Nazis. So therefore the Jews. Therefore, Dana, you shouldn't be voting because we need to repeal the 19th Amendment. So I feel like we're beleaguered by this. We have this two-tiered system on the right, where at the policy legal level, you have the same ineffective corporatist weirdos in everywhere except for Florida doing their thing. But then at the subculture social media level, you have this increasing reactionary weirdness. And it's not making us more right-wing. It's just perpetuating the same failure, but making us more unelectable.
Right. No, I think that's true. And when you mentioned, Obamacare, and of course the consolidation of student loans at the federal level, which, that was under Obama Biden and his, for early on in his first term. I understand that there is, and I say this as a mom of Gen Z kids, there is a disaffected portion of the youngest generation that's now coming into its own in terms of voting and being active in civics, etc. They're incredibly disaffected. And I think one of the reasons why, honestly, is because of I think to an extent, there are a lot of people culpable in that because they have not had it adequately explained. And they follow personalities that I think rewrite history. They retroactively go back and they change history because the problem is what we just talked about. There's no conservative in a lot of what we're seeing in a lot of Republican policy today, but also, it's very real. I mean, they've been priced out of homes. They are dealing with astronomical cost of college. They're dealing with inflation still, and it does no good for anybody to Biden that message and act like it's not real because it is. I know that the president's cooking and he needs time to cook, but at the same time, these are real concerns. They're disaffected, and I think that they have legitimate concerns. However, there is a ploy at work, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist like some of our contemporaries, Daniel, but I think there's like this ploy at work that is leveraging this disaffected
Yes.
portion of the youth, using it to drive a wedge between an alliance that we've had in the Middle East for forever, also using it to drive division on the right and break up our coalition. And that's the other part of this. Yes, we have this disaffected generation, but we also have a party that has no idea how to run a coalition. They've never run a coalition ever. We have never seen the tent this big on the right. And that's not a bad thing. But the bad thing is not being able to speak to what the expectation is of that coalition. You have to know what the limitations are. That's where Reagan's 80-20 rule comes in. United on the 80%, we can fight over the 20% when we start making some progress on that 80%. That has not been realistically managed by the RNC or anyone in the Republican Party. And as a result, it's gone crazy and everyone wants their specific expectation met. They want their particular issue to be the issue that drives everything. And that's not realistic for a coalition. And people don't understand the difference between a party and a coalition. And this is where it gets a little bit European parliamentary, where we're bringing all of these other voices in. But there has to be a strategy, and there has not been anyone at the helm driving that. So as a result, we see this disaffectiveness. This is taking over. It's being amplified on social media. You have bad actors, foreign bad actors that are trying to amplify this to drive division, not just geopolitically, but also here within the United States. And that has contributed to this destabilization on the right. So it's all of these contributing factors. And I think it comes down to leaders have to lead, and they have to know how to lead, especially when you got a big tent like this.
So you're kind of alluding to the 800-pound gorilla. I've only talked about it a few times. Unlike some other big names that I guess 19 out of 20 shows are about the Jews, I actually go through land use and farming and
Right.
housing and healthcare and,
Of course.
you know,
Yes, we do. Yeah.
that's what I'm busy doing. And so I've actually barely even covered Israel the last 2 years, once in a while here or there, but really only to show how we're actually restraining them more and aligning sometimes
Yeah.
with Arabs and whatever. But okay, so let's say someone's not so hot to trot in Israel. Okay, fine, whatever. Where is this unnatural obsession coming from?
Somebody need that. You have these folks who I think some want a boogeyman and some are eager to fill that if it's advantageous to their political goals. I mean, let's look at, like, I can't wait until X rolls out the country of origin, whether that's, the VPN of whatever account was used to get the blue check or not. I cannot wait until that feature rolls out. And they've been talking about that a little bit, because we're going to see how many bad actors and how many foreign operators are on social media helping to drive this wedge and drive these narratives. I can't wait for that, because one of the biggest accounts that was doing it, that came out last month, they had over 1 million followers, had more followers than I did. Only been open for like 2 years. And turns out it was some like Pakistani phone in Iraq somewhere. I mean, literally, that's what it ended up being. It's insane. So I think that there needs to be, a little bit of transparency on that part. But I think you're right. Where it came from is a combination of all those things. People, I think that there's foreign operators that would love to use it to drive division. And I also think, frankly, some people have no idea about history. I mean, I don't even understand why this is this has nothing to do with Christian Zionism. It doesn't have anything to do with how people interpret Revelation. It has everything to do with facts and whether or not you believe in thousands of years of Islamic or Christian antiquity, where you're looking at where people came from, where that
Yep.
land belonged, and how many times they successfully defended their land from foreign invaders. End of. You either believe in cause and effect or you don't. It doesn't have to be some giant conspiracy. And that's what's so infuriating. If more people, Daniel, knew their history, then they would understand this.
And this is the concern, that there are so many people trying to exploit. And what I'm not very optimistic about this, but I'm wondering if you have an idea of how do we break through this vicious cycle, this moral hazard, where there's an inverse relationship between outcomes and brand building. See, if
Mm.
you're trying to achieve outcomes, you're trying to grow majority support, at least in a few states, certainly, but definitely nationally, to get certain outcomes on fiscal issues, social issues. But if you're trying to grow a brand, well, I'll tickle the algorithms with interesting things. So let's say it's the Jews. So you don't need 51% for that. You get 1% of 335 million, and then you have international as well. You'll get very rich off of that. And then everything that happens in the world thereafter, well, you have to prime the pump and trace it back to there. So the left is busy. I see them fighting in 50 states, primaries, general elections, legislative sessions, every issue imaginable. And I see the right, while they have activists, we are investing in pundits. They have
Yeah.
activists, we have pundits. How do
We're
we
doing
get back to
political
activism?
OnlyFans. It's political OnlyFans. That's what the right's doing. That's all it is. It's political prostitution. It is people that basically create the social media version of an OnlyFans account, and then they go out there and tickle the algorithm because they care about clicks. These are people who have never canvassed. They have never phone banked. They don't donate to candidates. They don't host fundraisers. They get paid to go out and fundraise on behalf of some of these candidates. They will get paid for an endorsement. They will get paid to tweet about issues. They will get paid to talk about it in a video, whether it's on Instagram or wherever. That is what they're doing. It is literally the political OnlyFans. It is the prostitution of the political right. And I get it. The incentivization that we've been seeing with a lot of these social media platforms hasn't been helpful to deep intellectual discussion. It hasn't, because it rewards outrage. It rewards conspiracy. It rewards controversy for the sake of controversy. And then real discussion gets buried. So we're in this like idiocracy loop where we keep arguing the same things that don't push the needle anywhere. And that's the other thing. A lot of the stuff that happens online, it doesn't move the needle in meat space. Nobody cares with some of this stuff on. I see it all the time. It doesn't move the needle. It didn't move the needle in my conservative county in Texas, where back in, I think it was 2018, 2020, you had Ted Cruz that lost a Beto O'Rourke by over 2,000 votes. I mean, it didn't move the needle. It has to move the needle. So I always measure every engagement. And I think this should be the rule for people on the right. Does it get you closer to your goal? If it does, then engage. If not, don't engage. You don't have to attend every fight to which you're invited, and you don't have to sell your soul for clicks, but it's being rewarded. And I think we got to get away from that model. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know. The powers that be are going to run the companies the way that they see fit, but it would really help if the right lived up to the intellectual expectation of the right and actually was a little consistent and honest about this.
Exactly. And to tell me, but Bob Dole and Mitt Romney did this is not an excuse for being a jerk now and just
Right.
squandering our opportunities. I know you got to run. I just got to get one last thought from you. So, in addition to a lack of a fiscal future for the young generation, and that's being exploited, there's also a social future. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are noticing, as part of this reactionary insanity. So because we had feminism and evidently people don't know how to be sane with that, so we're going to go and ascribe to ourselves every stereotype that the left threw at us for years and embrace it and say we don't like women. This sort
It's
of
so dumb.
Andrew Tate thing I'm seeing.
Well, I
And
mean, well,
yeah,
in defense, Andrew Tate was a guy who said that he would bang a tranny, and he, apparently talked about, gay fantasies. So I really don't take the criticisms of a single guy with no shoulders and a slack jaw very seriously on that account at all whatsoever. I understand what you're saying, and I think I know where you're going with this. I don't mean to interrupt you, but the moment
no,
you
for
said that, I
sure.
had to get in. Um, I think that two things. First, I feel like their position is a betrayal of conservatism. And it is a betrayal of the liberty that is promoted by our side. And it is a betrayal of the very Christianity that they claim that they're upholding. And I say this because I go back, I'm in New Testament. I'm looking at who were the first people that were told when Jesus was risen. And it was two women who had no standing in public life at the time, women who were not equal to men. Jesus made them equal. Christianity, they're neglecting and betraying their faith by ignoring this. Now, they can sit here and blame it on third and fourth wave feminism. Third and fourth wave feminism is not the equality that Christianity gave. Third and fourth wave feminism was men can be women now, and women have to move over and just accept it. And they need to understand that differentiation. So that's huge. I feel like when they do that, they are betraying everything that they claim to stand for. And it's always these single dudes that wouldn't get a time of day from a woman anyway. Why is anyone taking Nick Fuentes seriously? I mean, he's literally a Nazi twink. This is a guy that got caught by his own audience live streaming gay porn, Daniel. Why would anyone sit here and take relationship advice from a perpetually single 5'3" twink? I don't know, but I wouldn't. I don't think any good looking woman would either. So these are the people that need to be just shuffled off the board. You can't take them seriously. But for the disaffected people, out there. What the message needs to be on the right is, you know what? Your concerns about the economy, your concerns, because a lot of this, remember, this is the COVID generation. This is the generation of people that were locked up in their houses for over a year, that were really denied a lot of these
Yep.
major developmental milestones. And I think that they have every right to be angry about that, but they need to remember who did it to them. And it wasn't the allies that they're spurning now. They need to be told what you're looking at is legitimate. Your concerns about housing, your concerns about Social Security, your concerns about healthcare and education. You are exactly right to be concerned about those things. You're right to be concerned about our national security. But if you want to be successful and you really want to achieve your dreams and you want to have a piece of that American pie and have the life that you talk about having on X and Facebook and Instagram, you need to join with us to make it happen, because some of us have a legacy of putting points on the board and some of us don't. So that matters. Record matters. So come and join with the people who do get in the trench and do make it happen, and we can work together. And all of these other people, all of these other grifters and these snake oil salesmen, I think that they just need to be spurned. They just need to be spurned right out of the movement, because you can't argue with people who are not on your side. It's not infighting when they've never been on your side in the first place.
Bingo, exactly. If you reject the Enlightenment, you're not rejecting progressivism. Those are very different things, and it's not a spectrum. It comes around in a circle, and when you don't know what you believe and you're just inveighing against, often
Yes.
when you sow that discord, you land in the very place where you started. Dana, words from the wise. Yeah, it's funny because you're pretty young, but in this generation, you would be considered the elder statesman. But we need a lot more of that. The
That's
queen of
hysterical. I
conservative
love
talk
it. I'll
radio.
take it. I'll take
Queen
it.
of
And it's good to
conservative
see you, my
talk
friend.
radio. You can
And thank
find
you for
Dana.
your clear voice on this.
Yeah, we can find Dana 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern. D Lash on Twitter. We will see you soon. Thanks so much for joining
Yes,
us.
sir. Thank you, my friend.